Hi, my name is Catherine. I am a freshman at Harvard University, and I'm currently deciding on my major, but it's probably going to be something to do with math or computer science. And I mean, I guess a fun fact is I'm actually on campus or in Cambridge right now, so yeah.
Hey, my name is David. I go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I am a fourth year. I'm studying mechanical engineering. I'm probably going to be graduating in the fall of next year, so I'll be extending my graduation by a quarter. Um, something I don't know, something interesting about me is that I picked up rock climbing in college. It's pretty cool.
Hi, my name's Sasha. I'm a freshman at UCLA, and I was a math major, and it has not even been a quarter, and I already switched to computational biology. Fun fact about me, I can imitate the minions from Despicable Me.
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm a freshman at Hopkins, and I'm currently majoring in neuroscience. Fun fact about me, I have changed my major 6 times this semester, so we'll see how long neuroscience sticks.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all for your introductions. And before we move on, since some of us here might be new to InterSTEM, here's a little bit about our organization. So InterSTEM is a student-run nonprofit organization that aims to promote various aspects of STEM globally. We currently offer free tutoring services in multiple subjects, including calculus, chemistry, and physics. We also publish STEM-related blogs and articles on a regular basis. We've also established over 20 chapters across US and internationally with hundreds of active members. We also have an ongoing STEM writing competition that's open to all elementary, middle, and high schoolers with monetary prizes. So if you're interested, just feel free to let us know in the chat for any of the opportunities that I just mentioned. And also you can visit our website at interstem.us or refer to any of the links that will be mentioned on our future slides. Well, now we will officially begin our college panel AMA. We will be displaying all the questions one by one on the screen, and our panelists will be giving responses based on their very own experience with the college application process, as well as their college life in general. And in the meantime, as it states on the screen, feel free to ask any questions in the chat because we do have an open forum or Q&A towards the end of the event. And we will be picking a few questions from the chat to answer if time permits. Okay, so let's start with our first question, which is, how did you make your college list and how many colleges did you actually end up applying to?
Okay, I think I did it in a pretty traditional way, which is, to go through and then look at like safety colleges, matches and reaches. And then I chose to apply like to a few colleges in each of those categories. I actually had a pretty big list that I whittled down based on, after talking to my parents and my counselor, school counselor and things like that. So I ended up applying to about 15 colleges, and this is counting all the UCs as one.
Yeah, I think in contrast, mine was pretty haphazard, you could say. I did a little bit of research here and there, applied to a few UCs, and like for example, the only out of state that I applied to was Purdue University in Indiana. I ended up applying to 7 colleges.
So what I did was pretty similar to Catherine. Basically what I ended up doing is making like a list from like safeties, like targets and reaches. But to be honest, I barely applied to any reaches and I should have applied to more safeties. I ended up mainly going with the target range. I didn't apply to that many colleges. So I'm counting the UCs as one. I applied to about 10 or 11.
So I was similar to Catherine, but I decided I didn't want to fill out the coalition app and I just wanted to do Common App. So that kind of narrowed down some schools for me. I ended up applying to, I think, 15 schools, counting all the UCs and Cal State separately. but I ED'd Hopkins and got in ED, so I didn't apply to all my schools. I was originally going to apply to a total of 24, I believe.
So it looks like you don't necessarily apply to all the colleges that you originally plan on doing when you're like first creating the list. I think that leads to our next question. So after you make your college list, you obviously have to start writing essays. And I know there exists the Common App, and then there are like college specific supplemental essays. So let's start with the Common App, because I know that there are multiple prompts in which you can choose from. So the question is, what were some factors that made you decide like one prompt over another? In other words, how did you choose which prompt to write about when you were working on your Common application?
Actually, like I think usually when people ask me this question, and the way I did it is I wouldn't actually choose a prompt to answer. What I did was I just started writing. I just started writing because really what the Common App is you want colleges to know who you are, and you want to convey like some aspect of your personality to them, whether it's, how perseverant you are or something like that. And so for me, I just chose aspects of my personality that I really wanted colleges to know about me, aside from my stats, who I am. And I just started writing because what's really good about the Common App is, in fact, I think they have a really wide variety of prompts. And in fact, one of the prompts is just like, tell me anything. So if in the end your essay doesn't really fit any of the prompts, you can just go with that one. But usually as you start writing, you realize that your essay naturally goes to like a prompt. So for me, I just started writing, and then naturally I realized, I started answering one of those prompts. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I did a really similar thing too. I didn't really feel like being restricted by any of like oh my God, I totally cut off David, but I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay, I'll just finish what I was talking about real quick. Okay. Mine's very similar to Catherine. I basically just started writing, and I didn't want to feel restricted by the prompts. And I was like, if it goes with the prompt in the end, I'll just, like fill out the little dot that it goes with the prompt. For me though, I feel like my essay didn't really end up going with any of the prompts, so I did go with the open one.
Yeah, I guess it's been so long for me. It's 4 years ago actually, but I guess very similarly to Sasha and Catherine, I would say that you want to you would choose a prompt that you can tell a good story on, because yeah, like they were saying, the special thing about essays is that it's open-ended. You can tell anything about yourself. I just wanted to emphasize that point.
So for me, I was a little intimidated by the Common App at first. So I looked at the UC prompts first, and I ended up writing a very long essay for one of the UC prompts that I liked, and kept like editing it. Ended up being like a very different essay from what I submitted to the UCs. But I liked the essay that came out of it. And so it kind of matched I didn't match any of the prompts. So I chose like anything, like it was that prompt where you can submit anything. But I think I had a little bit more untraditional route for writing my Common App, because I didn't just like sit down and go, I'm going to write my Common App. Yeah, I never had that kind of process.
Let me just interject one more thing here. Maybe it would be helpful for some people to think about it almost like a job interview. So something that you could think about doing is taking a look at common job interview questions. For example, like everyone always asks stuff about like, oh, tell me about a challenge that you had to overcome, and maybe based on those questions that you find, like brainstorm a couple of different stories that you could be talking about, and then that could kickstart your brain to connect one of those stories to one of those essay prompts.
All right. I think our next question is probably one of the most asked questions that we've received from the audience. And that is, do you have any general tips or advices on essay writing? And this can be Common App or like supplemental essays.
I think I mentioned this in my last answer. on that. One thing I found really helpful is when you're writing your essay, I know some people have like a really compelling story already that they want to share, which is really great, but a lot of people don't, and I didn't. And one thing I did to get me started is really I looked at like a list of my extracurriculars, and then I kind of wrote down like what I learned from each of them. For example, like, you know, from math club, I learned to like think critically or something like that, or and then what I did was I looked at like the essay prompts, and I kind of made a list of like, you know, for each essay prompt, which extracurricular or which aspect of my personality I wanted to, you know, have colleges learn about me for that prompt. And then that's how I kind of went off of it, because a lot of the times the hard part is just like getting started on what you want to say about this prompt. And so I found that that really helped me just to like get started.
Yeah, 100%. Getting started is always the hardest thing to do. And so to that, I think something that I wish I did better when I was writing out my essays in the beginning was like not stifling any of my own ideas when I began writing, because oftentimes I would be typing something out and then I'd think to myself, oh no, that sounds dumb, like delete that, wait until you have a good idea and then type it out. But for me, I've learned that a lot of my thinking process happens as I'm doing something, in this case as I'm typing. So if you can defer your own judgment on yourself and get all of your ideas out onto your page before you begin to edit, then that'll give you the biggest reservoir of stuff to pull from.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with David on like just get started with writing. It's definitely the hardest step because you constantly want to criticize yourself like, oh, this sentence doesn't sound good or this doesn't sound good. And then you want to just keep restarting. But if you just go with it, like you'll get some new ideas and at least you can create a new essay from that. But definitely something else that I did during my essay writing process is just writing a bunch of things that I like genres that I like what music do I listen to, what things do I like to do in my free time, maybe something that they wouldn't necessarily get from like my Common App itself, like the list of extracurriculars. And I think that definitely helped me like think more critically about like what I can write in the essays that they may not see somewhere else. So yeah.
And then one last thing, just make sure you're actually sticking to the prompts and like really answering what the prompt says. A lot of the supplemental questions are worded very specifically because they want you to talk about a very specific aspect, whether it's like your impact on the community or even like, or how like different activities have impacted you. So just make sure after you have written your essay to go back to the prompt and be like, did I actually answer everything? Because if you don't answer the prompt, the admissions officer is basically going to throw out your application because they're looking for you to answer those questions for a reason.
So it seems like all of you think that the hardest step is like probably like starting on it. And just curious, did you guys ever had to like start over like after writing an essay, like spending so much time on it and just like starting over?
Oh no, yeah, most definitely. I think I did that with my Common App at least like 2 times. And I think that's also the thing. I think it's a very fine line to walk because I don't think you'll ever be fully satisfied with an essay. So I'm not saying like to rewrite an essay every time you think, oh, there's a problem with it. But I also think that it is important if you feel very strongly that this isn't the essay that this isn't the way you want colleges to perceive you, even when everyone else is telling you, you know, oh, it's already a good essay. I think it's important to really honor your gut feeling. But at the same time, I think this is a fine line to walk because there's definitely that feeling of, oh, it's never good enough. And then you just keep on wanting to like rewrite it and things like that. And at some point you have to, you know, cut yourself off.
All right. I think we can move on to our next question. And I think essay is indeed one of the most important aspect of your college application, but it's definitely not the only thing that college admission officers look for because obviously there are like extracurriculars, leadership experience, letter of recs, etc. In that light, what do you think is the most important part of the college application? And also, how should like these students approach on working on so many applications and essays at once?
Well, really, I think the college application is really a culmination of your 4 years, right? Because on it, you have your GPA, which, shows the effort you've put into these 4 years and everything like that. So whenever, I think when I get asked this question, I think what's really important to me, or at least how I approached it, was I didn't really think to myself, what is the most important part of the college application? It's more so that at each step of the way, you do your best on the part that you can control. Like, for example, when you're a second semester senior and you're writing your essays during winter break, you can't control your GPA anymore or your letter of rec anymore. And so I think at that point, you can scare yourself by saying, oh my God, like the essays aren't as important as my GPA and already, ruined, or like my GPA is not as good as I want it to be. But I think instead of that mindset, you can think like, right now, what's in front of me is my essays, and the essays are an important part. So I'm just going to do that the best I can. While you're in, sophomore year, you work on your GPA because that's the part, and your relationship with your teachers, because that's the part that, is right in front of you and you can work on. So I think it's important to treat each step of the college application as the most important part, and focus on the parts that you can control, instead of, thinking to yourself like, oh, well, the essays aren't as important, so I can slack off right now. Or like, oh no, my GPA is already not as good as I want it to be, so I'm already ruined. Like, instead of thinking like that, I would just say, treat each part like it's the most important part while you're doing it. And then I think for the second part, how should students approach tackling so many applications? Really, I think it's just all about being organized. That part is just, you really need to be on top of the deadlines. I had like a lot of Excel sheets, I guess, just like listing out the deadlines for each college and things like that, like reminders on my phone, notes apps. It's also nice to have like somebody who can like hold you accountable, like either a parent or a friend. Yeah. So.
I'm going to just simply agree with everything that Catherine said.
I also completely agree with what Catherine said for the first part. On the second part, I just want to add that for me, there really was no particular method. Like, to be completely honest, you probably shouldn't do what I did. Like, I would just come up with random prompt ideas like 2 weeks before an essay, and I'd like start rewriting it. So sometimes I wasn't super organized in the process, but once I got a topic that I really liked, I ended up like pulling all-nighters on it, like willingly. So that's like kind of the approach I took. But as to what the ideal way is to do it, you should definitely stay more organized and stay on top of your deadlines. Don't be like me.
For me, at least for the most important part of the college application process, I think it's definitely going to be your essays, because like good GPA is a dime a dozen, but like good essays are a lot more rare. Good essays can help if you don't necessarily have the best GPA or the best SAT scores or whatever. But if you have bad essays, a good GPA isn't really going to save you. So I think you really should focus on your essays. In terms of tackling it, I think you need to find a method that really works for you to actually write your essay. So I found working between 11 and 2 is really when like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. is when I like got my best ideas, not necessarily the best grammar. So when I'm trying to come up with like a new essay idea and just kind of like get things down on paper, I would start writing essays then, and then during the day I would then go back and like fix all the grammar and like terrible wording, things like that. And then the second piece of advice I can offer is a lot of prompts are very similar. A lot of schools will ask you about like some community service thing you did, or some extracurricular or some leadership thing. So if you can kind of categorize them, you can actually use essays you wrote for one school for another school, just because the prompts are so similar. So I ended up having a doc where I just had like the same essay, but different word counts depending on the school.
Interesting. Because I do have a few senior friends who just had this experience. And according to them, there's like this one day when you just suddenly feel super motivated to write a bunch of essays. And I think that's pretty interesting. I think our next question is, it might be a bit personal, but how confident were you when you were applying to like all the colleges that you applied to, and especially the one that you're attending right now?
I would say to this question, like, I think something really important is when you're applying, to your reaches and your safeties and your targets, to really be honest with yourself. I think you don't want to overestimate yourself, certainly not, but you don't want to underestimate yourself either, because I think when it comes to like these top tier colleges, which, like I think there's always going to be luck involved, and I don't think you should ever like count yourself out of the game, because actually for me, I had a really bad early decision cycle, and that kind of psyched me out a bit, and I just didn't really want to apply to these like my reaches anymore. I think it was really my friends and my family who convinced me to, which I'm really grateful to now. So I think what's really important is to not underestimate yourself, because I actually see that quite often, where you kind of feel uncomfortable with applying to your reaches, maybe like you don't deserve it, which I definitely felt when I was applying to the school I attend right now. So I would say to not make that mistake. But yeah, just like remember, like at this kind of level, when you're applying to like super top tier colleges, there's always going to be some luck involved, but also because there's always luck involved, you shouldn't count yourself out of the game just because you think some part of your application might not be as strong as other people's.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think the desire to kind of like almost downplay yourself is super strong for I know for myself, for a lot of straight up a lot of other Asian people that I know, and so that's just something to keep in mind going forward, like being able to know your worth almost.
Yep, I definitely agree with what everyone said so far. When it comes to confidence in applying to the school I currently attend, I honestly didn't have confidence at all. And this is definitely something you shouldn't do. I like downplayed myself a lot, and I was really, really scared. I was convinced I was going to get rejected from everywhere. I went on Reddit and read all of the college horror stories. Don't scare yourself. Like, every applicant is different, and no one is telling you what exactly what is on their application. They look at you as an individual, and so you can't estimate how your college process is going to turn out based on what happened to someone else. And you just have to relax and just let whatever happens. There definitely is some luck involved, but if you've put your best effort in the application, then that's that.
Yeah, similar to everyone else, I definitely did not think I was going to get into Hopkins when I initially applied. So even like up until the date I got in, I was like writing essays because I was like, I'm not going to get in, so I need to apply to all these other schools. There's definitely a ton of luck associated with it. Definitely had a lot of nights where I was super stressed that I wasn't going to get into college and like didn't really know what I wanted to do. But on the flip side of that, even if you don't get in, like going to community college and transferring after a couple years is really great because you save a ton of money. And you get like time to explore, like when you ultimately go to like go to interview for jobs or grad school or whatever, you don't say, oh, I went to community college and then transferred. You just say like whatever school you ended up graduating from, this is the school I went to. So I think don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your wonderful responses. And at this point, we will move on from general college application, like questions regarding general college application process, because we also received a bunch of questions regarding extracurriculars. So we will be focusing on that from now on. And that leads to our next question, which is, what extracurriculars did you focus on when you were a high schooler? And how should high school students in general choose like which extracurriculars to pursue in their, I guess, school career?
For me, it was a lot of STEM, math, more specifically, a little bit of physics. I think this question, I think, is I'm a very strong proponent of, doing what you love, because I think for me, in the process of, finding what I really like to do, which is math and physics, I definitely went through some other things. Like, I tried doing sports. I remember the summer before freshman year, I was really stressed because a lot of my friends were doing sports and I felt like I had to. And then also music, I played piano for a very long time. And I think what I found is that when you really find something you like, it's still going to be difficult. Don't get me wrong. Like, there was a lot of times that, I felt like, math is just not my thing. I'm like not really into this anymore. But I think even though anything you do, if you want to do well, is going to be difficult. If you truly like it, the feeling is going to be different. I think there's a much larger feeling, like a rewarding feeling when you do something you love versus what you do something because you see other people doing it. And I really felt that difference when I was doing math versus, like trying to get into a sport because, I saw everybody else doing it. And I think when you feel that, not only will you want to improve yourself, but I think that feeling also comes across to other people. And whether it's through your essays or whether it's to your teachers, your peers. And I think that's the really important part, which is why I'm always going to be a proponent of, people doing what they love and, finding what you love by trying out different things.
Yeah, maybe to expand on that a little bit. I know in the past, it was really easy for me to see like the whole idea of something that you love as something that, like when you do it, it feels good. But you learn as you meet more people that love is as much a choice as it is a feeling. And so when you really like when you love something, you do enjoy it. Yes, you have what Catherine was talking about, but there's also a part of it that's like I'm almost gonna choose to love it and stick through it even when it's hard, like what she was saying. So how should you choose like how to value your extracurriculars? I think something that I see people often needing work on as they're coming up as underclassmen is being able to work in a very unstructured environment. So for example, if you're trying to start a new club and you're like, where the heck do I get started? Like learning how to work through that feeling and learning how to move quickly when there isn't a whole lot of structure around you is something that's really important, because if you're planning to go work in like a more startup environment or something like that, that's a really important skill. Almost it is equally as important, maybe even more important than actually being able to do the technicalities of what you study.
Yeah, so going off of that, so the extracurriculars I focused on were definitely like somewhat like more STEM oriented, but they were definitely still all over the place. And it's just more going off of the fact, I definitely think that like maintaining your mental health is very important, and you shouldn't force yourself to do anything to create a story. I think there's a common trend now. It's like if you like this, you have to do this, 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 and this. But don't feel pressured into only like having that like super narrow vision. Like I was in speech and debate, but I really loved choir at the same time. And at the same time, I wanted to do some research at UCI. And so I definitely think that it is totally okay if you want to explore your interests, but whatever you do, you should definitely make sure you love it, because that will end up giving you a better outcome. If you don't love it, first of all, you're not going to want to be very involved in it. And admissions officers can definitely see through whether it's something you're truly interested in or something you're just doing because it looks good. If you love it, then automatically you're going to see your involvement increasing because it's something you want to do. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I was actually a part of like more humanities clubs in high school. I did speech and debate, like Amnesty International, the Democrats clubs, etc., like things like that. And then I joined a lab the summer before senior year. Ended up really falling in love with bio, and applied as a bio major because I enjoyed it a lot. But I think just explore your passions, like pretty like as a freshman, really like kind of starfish, like try everything. You might like overwhelm yourself just a little bit, but it's good to like kind of say, okay, I enjoyed this, but I know I don't like this. So it's like I did that and I was like, okay, I like humanities stuff, I don't necessarily like math. And doing that, you can kind of will down your interest, and then that also helps you to focus on the things that you're really passionate about.
I think I also agree to like what all of you guys said, because I think like these days, especially like nowadays, many students just tend like to feel pressured to pursue certain activities if they're slightly interested in like one area, whether that's math, physics, or like music, just to like create a good story for your college application essays. But I think like what I heard from other seniors is that if you do something that you truly like, you automatically like get a good essay when you're like writing about it because you just love it. And then, okay. And I think we can move on to our next question, and that is, this is personally what I'm also curious about, and that's what should students do over their summer break? How should they like spend their summer? And what did you guys do personally during your summers when you were a high schooler?
Well, I think this actually kind of ties back to, you know, what a lot of people are mentioning before. Like, you know, I think a lot of people think there's something you have to do during the summer, you know, internships or, you know, summer programs. And I know there are like certain summer programs that are really like lorded over and like a lot of people like very prestigious. And it becomes, you know, again, once that part of that narrative that you're creating. But I think for me, what's really important is this is a very, like it is a very personal question. It's what do you want to do during your summer vacation? And I think like, you know, you don't want to say, well, everybody wants, you know, just stay at home and like, you know, watch Netflix. And that's not what I'm saying. But as in like, you know, for you, what truly do you think is going to be the most productive way to spend your summer vacation that you can still enjoy? And I know for some people it was, you know, summer school. And I had one friend who now she's a Harvard friend, so she goes to school with me. And, you know, she just spent the summer, you know, doing like a fashion internship because it was like a really good opportunity with like a really cool brand. And, you know, that was something she was really interested in and didn't even necessarily like fit what she's studying now, but it was just such a cool opportunity she couldn't pass up. So I think that's the thing that you want to ask yourself, like, based on my circumstance, my opportunities right now, what is the best thing I can do with my time? For me, because I was always so interested in math, but I've always only had really exposure to math competitions. Math research was something I really wanted to get in during the summer vacation. So for me, what was really fitting is these math research programs, you know, where I learned a lot about pure math, where I learned a lot about, you know, how to conduct number theory research and like realize there was so much more to math than just, you know, math competitions. So for me, that was really the best use of my time. But for everyone, it's different. And really, you shouldn't feel pressure to, you know, do certain programs, certain camps, just because, you know, someone who got into a college you want to go to before you did it. It's really different for everybody. So
Well, during my high school summers, I stayed home, worked at a music repair shop, and played Team Fortress 2. So so that was good. But I would say if you're looking for or maybe to take that like whole extracurriculars thing like one step further, summer vacation is really cool because you don't have school hanging over your head. So it's a great time to like Catherine was saying, it's a great time to learn something new, and to almost to like try something that you wouldn't have gotten into otherwise with very little like negative recourse, because yeah, it's a good time where you can put time into stuff, and that's really the sum total of what I have to offer.
Same. I guess I'm kind of just going to be like lightly repeating. I definitely think you should do whatever you want during the summer vacation. If that means like learning something new, definitely a great time to do that. Personally, for one summer I went to India, the other one I went to debate camp because I wanted to get better at debate. And then after that, I ended up working in my lab at UCI. So it's really just about what you want to do, what particular skill you want to build. If you want to relax or like maybe you want to explore something, hey, like I feel like everything is contributing to your life story in some way. So like anything you can do is always valuable.
Yeah, I think everyone else has given you like the advice for what you should do, but I'll say what I did. High school, I lived and breathed speed debate. So I went to debate camp twice. And then senior year, I also worked at a lab at UCI. And so, you know, just do what you like, do what you enjoy, and explore your passions.
Sounds good. I think just for the sake of time, we will be skipping a few questions in the middle. And if it feels like we skipped questions that you guys wanted it to be answered, then feel free to ask it in the chat or ask it verbally later when we have the open forum. So at this point, I think we're going to be moving on to questions regarding your college experience. And we're going to start with what major you chose, like why did you choose the major, and what are your most and it can be least also, favorite parts of your current major that you're studying?
Well, like I said, I haven't declared yet, but it's most likely going to be math or computer science or a combination. And I think I chose it just because I've always loved math. I think math has always been such a big part of my life that I don't know, it just felt like it was almost comforting to go into college, knowing that this is something I wanted to do. And then I took my first CS class and I realized, there's actually a lot of applications of math and CS and, I just, kind of fell in love with CS a little bit. And so we're just going to see where that goes. I'm not really 100% sure how I'm going to integrate those two yet, but yeah. And then as for most and least favorite parts, I think as we were saying before, I think when you really like something, all the emotions are intensified. So there are definitely days where, like I'm trying to get this code to work and it's not working and it's very frustrating. But I think it's that like 2 seconds afterwards where you get it to work that really just like, keeps on making you come back for more. At least for me, that's what got me into coding. Just like the 2 seconds after all the frustration where you finally get it to work. And I think you just get hooked on that feeling. And then another thing I really like about my major is at least based on, I've only taken one humanities class so far, but based on what I've seen so far, I think math and CS are both very collaborative, maybe more so than let's say like my writing class, where we had like, problem set groups outside of class and like you really get to meet people and get close to people. And that was really interesting for me, especially, considering we're in a pandemic right now. So that was really the way I met people. And so I really just like how collaborative it is.
I chose mechanical engineering because I really liked Legos and I really like to make stuff. So actually, I know my video icon's a little bit small, but I'm like organizing my family's Lego collection down here. So my favorite part of mechanical engineering, this is very much a part of my personality, is the stuff that you get to make. Because like the reason that I actually chose ME over something like CS or software is because you get to hold what you make. And I was actually hoping to get a chance to show this off a little bit later, but one of the clubs that I did, this thing called Cal Poly Racing, I'm holding a piece of a race car's suspension that I designed my second year. So if you want to talk a little bit more about that, I'd be super happy to. Least favorite part, I think, is the tenacity that it requires, because I recently came off an aerospace internship where the project timelines are probably, for example, the James Webb Space Telescope, which is the replacement for the Hubble Space Telescope, began its design process in the 90s. So it's been in design for about 30 years. And that's obviously an outlier, but as much as I like to see stuff like built, I like to see it built kind of quickly. So the balance of the two is always a thing for me.
Okay, so I actually got into UCLA as a math major. Not a very I didn't have a very deep reason for this. I was like, oh, I like math. I'm like kind of good at math, so I guess I'll apply as a math major. But then once I started doing more research over the summer, ironically, after I decided which college I wanted to go to, I started doing a lot more research, and I realized I was kind of convincing myself, oh, I only want to do math. That definitely wasn't the case. I'm definitely more of a broad STEM person. And so the major I'm in, computational biology, it's relatively new. It's 10, 15 years old. It really just combines elements of math, CS, biochem. So you end up taking a lot of courses in all of those and going really into depth in all of this. It's very interdisciplinary. And I'm really glad that it's something that's broad so it encompasses all of my interests. Okay, I'll start with my least favorite parts, I guess. It's definitely very frustrating. People around you can be very competitive, especially in a lot of these STEM classes where they call them weed out pre-med classes. People tend to be very competitive, may not want to help you. I haven't encountered that problem as much though, to be honest. My most favorite part, definitely that I'm learning so much and my major courses are super broad. So I like the fact that I don't have to take 10 classes of math in one quarter. I can take math, and then I can also take bio, and I can have like this kind of breadth of things that I can study, so I don't necessarily get tired of any one subject.
Yeah, so I chose my major because of that internship at UCI showed me I was very interested in bio. I applied to Hopkins as a molecular and cellular bio major. Obviously, that has changed now. I chose neuro because of the research I'm very interested in. It's kind of niche, but I'm very interested in multiple sclerosis research, which is a neurodegenerative disease. So that's why I switched my major at least. But I actually haven't taken any major classes because you have to get through all the prereqs and stuff. I'll be taking 2 neuro classes next semester. Hopefully I'll enjoy them. Least favorite parts of my major, definitely like all the like organic chemistry. That's kind of a prereq for that. You have to do a lot of that if you're any kind of bio major. But orgo was definitely my least favorite part of last semester, at least. Favorite part, there's just so many people at Hopkins who are neuroscience majors or multi cell majors, and so there's a lot of overlaps. So you can just meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, talk to upperclassmen. There's so many, like just so many people I can reach out to if I need help with anything, and I think that's really great.
Awesome. I think our next question is gonna be beneficial to like most high schoolers, and that is, well, first, what does your workload look like as a college student? How does it differ from high school? And since procrastination is a universal thing, whether or not you are a college student or a high schooler, how do you think students can try to better time manage and just use it effectively?
I think the one not weird thing about college, but for me it was just a little bit different from high school, is that the workload for me really varies. Like there's some weeks where I'll have, project after project. There'll be some weeks where I just like really feel empty because there's like not that much stuff going on. And for clubs too, like there will be some like weeks where I'm organizing an event and it'll just be crazy, and then some weeks it's just really quiet. So how can students, I think what's important is that when it is one of those like really busy weeks, to like kind of plan your, like to know when your busy weeks are going to be, because usually like classes like will pass out syllabi with like all your project deadlines, and it's really nice to have it laid out on your calendar just to know which weeks are your busy weeks and how you can prepare. Like there are some things you just can't prepare for. If an essay topic they give you like on the week, you can't really do anything about it. But if there's like a long-term project and it's due on a week that you have a lot of other things, you want to be able to like space these things out. So just like laying out all your deadlines and like visually seeing them and like trying to minimize the workload you have to do on these busy weeks by preparing beforehand, I think really helps. Yeah. But also I'm like not the best person to talk about time management because I definitely struggle with that a lot. Lots of procrastination here, so.
Yeah, my workload also varies a lot from quarter to quarter. Like my first year, I actually that'd be a good point to make. Expect your workload to vary a lot from quarter to quarter. So my first, or semester, whatever, my first year was pretty laid back. I had a lot of time to try different things here and there. But as I got into upperclassmen years, the workload started to kind of get crazy, and I will say that it took me like all of high school plus 3 years of college to figure out how I best study. In the beginning of college, I was like, I just have to, have to feel the pressure of a close deadline before I can actually work on something. But by my third year, I was a little tired of that, and I started to actually try and hold myself to a schedule of working during the daytime and not doing so much at night. And that actually ended up working really well. So in order to practice better time management, what you're going to want to do is just set a schedule for yourself. Try studying at different times of the day. It'll take a little bit to like figure out like your own rhythms, but there will be some times that like work better for you, sometimes that work less better for you, and then stick to those. So like I guess like make a schedule and stick to it. Like find people that like to study at the same time as you, and just try different things. You'll have to get familiar with yourself over your next couple of college years.
Oh yeah, so I agree with what David and Catherine have said so far. My workload definitely has fluctuated. Like our second quarter just started and I can already tell I have way more work to do than last quarter. It's definitely like professor dependent. But also another thing I'd like to bring up is that UCLA is on the quarter system. We move pretty fast. Sometimes before you can even like take a breath, you have your first midterm. So I wouldn't say I necessarily spend a lot of time doing homework or projects, but I do spend a lot of time studying. And that's just because of the fact that with the quarter system, you have 10 weeks, you have 2 midterms and a final. It can get very hectic. And so time management has definitely been very important. Something that's helped me personally is I have a little wall that sits in front of me during all my classes. As soon as I hear about a deadline, I just write it down on a Post-it note and like stamp it on the wall. So every time I sit in front of my computer, I have to look at the oncoming deadline. And this is where you can follow what Catherine talked about. If you know you have a very workload heavy week ahead of you, you should definitely make sure you get on at least 1 or 2 of those things, because even if you have them halfway done by that week, you're going to be in a much better place. Also, I waste a lot of time on YouTube and Netflix. Honestly, you should download a browser extension that stops you from going on those.
Yes, that is good.
Yeah, so I was a little bit of an idiot when I chose my classes this semester. So I had a very heavy workload, and it was not the most fun thing to deal with, especially in Zoom. So I'm not like sitting in the library and complaining with people. I'm like sitting in my room alone, and just trying to get through things. So while my workload this semester is very heavy, I've like talked to a bunch of upperclassmen. It's probably one of my heaviest workloads that I will have like in my 4 years at Hopkins. So I guess I got the hardest part out of the way. Things I did to better time manage. I found like just study buddying with people. I would like not even necessarily in the same class or even the same school. But I would just like call people on Zoom and we would just sit and work, because I found that like working with other people and like just having other people there made me less likely to like go and try and play games on my phone and stuff, because I feel guilty if someone else is working and I'm not. So that really motivated me and got me to like finish all my work. Also, you get something assigned and you have free time, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes in between classes, just work on an assignment then, because in college, because you're not there traditionally from like the 9 to 3 or whatever, or 8 to 3 that you do in high school, you should really take advantage of all the little bits of time that you have in between classes. Sometimes you'll have an hour, and just get an assignment out of the way. But definitely like the first semester of college is pretty rough. I've heard from people that like first semester at Hopkins is probably your roughest one, because you do have to learn how to study correctly, and just kind of get your feet under you. But then the rest of college becomes a lot easier once you figure all that out.
Great. I think our next question more so pertains to Catherine, Sasha, and Zara. And that's, how is school different than what you'd expected because of the COVID-19 pandemic? I think we can keep it brief just for the sake of time. And this is interesting because I do know that a lot of people, including myself, have this like college life fantasy. So it'd be interesting to hear your responses.
I don't know. I think a lot of how my friends have described is kind of like all the work of college is none of the fun. I wouldn't go that far, but I think it's definitely, there's a lot less room and opportunity to socialize. And that's really it, I guess. And like a lot of the people that you meet are just people from your classes. And like a lot of the times, like when you meet up, it's more revolving around kind of like schoolwork. So I guess it's just, yeah, less room to socialize, less opportunity to do that. And yeah.
Oh, okay. So I guess, yeah, I would definitely agree with Catherine. It's very different in terms of socializing, but honestly, I am an introvert. So it's like worked for me a little better, like not being around like the constant bustle of people. I do go to a public school. So like, I've heard that lecture halls can, fill up a lot. It can be very stressful to have a bunch of people around you. I'm definitely a person who works a little better on an individual basis. So this has really given me an opportunity to like acclimate to like the difficulty of the classes. It is different than what I expected because it is harder to reach out to people. I think there's definitely like some benefits and drawbacks with that.
Yeah, for me, I guess the biggest difference, I didn't have to experience the cold weather because, you know, Baltimore is really cold right now. But it's also a lot more isolating than I kind of expected, even like going into it, because as first semester freshmen, we haven't gone to form some of those friendships that you get from like orientation, pre-O, and then just like your classes, running into people randomly, clubs, all that stuff. So it was a lot more isolating than I thought it would be. Hopefully I'll be on campus next semester and I'll get all those experiences. But yeah, it's definitely been, for me at least, I have not enjoyed it and I cannot wait for COVID to be gone because I would love to be in Baltimore all the time, even though it's really cold.
All right. I think we can skip a few questions and move to, I guess, specific college app questions, and more specifically, like maintaining a good GPA and getting your standardized testings cleared. So our next question is, what were your GPA and SAT/ACT scores? And how do you think these, I guess, stats impacted your strength of your college application?
I can't remember very clearly anymore, but I think my GPA was around, oh, well, it was a 4.0 unweighted, 4.8-ish weighted. I didn't take the ACT, but I got a 1560 on the SAT and I just didn't want to take it anymore. So I was like, that's fine. And I think someone already mentioned this in this, this chat previously, but I don't think a good GPA or SAT score is enough to, distinguish you right away. But I definitely think that it helps in the way that if your GPA and SAT score aren't very good, I think it's very easy for colleges to discount you like right off the bat, even if you might have super good. That's not to say that a bad SAT score, a bad GPA is gonna take you out of the running. I just think a good one is definitely going to be helpful, but not enough to distinguish you right off the bat. So I do think they were helpful in the way that, they showed that I was, a serious applicant who, has some study habits, I guess. So I think that's really the gist of it.
If I remember correctly, I had a 4.0 weighted, probably somewhere like a 3.6, 3.7 unweighted. I actually didn't take the SAT. My ACT was a 34, I believe. And what Catherine said about like GPA and SAT, ACT kind of making the almost like the foundation of a strong application. Yeah, that is true. But if you have your eyes set on a certain college and like an honest appraisal, you might not think that you can get there like as it is. Like 100% go the community college route, because I know like some of the smarter people that I've met in the mechanical engineering program have been transfers. So like there should be no stigma against going a community college route.
So my GPA unweighted was a 4, and my weighted GPA was like around a 4.3. My ACT score was a 35. I'm gonna like kind of go off of what everyone's been saying. Like, I definitely think it helps with the strength of like application, but especially with how competitive college admissions has gotten, it's become like GPA and SAT scores have become more of a filter. I definitely think depending on which schools you apply to, they can matter more or less. In my case, it helped. UCLA does tend to be like a more stats heavy admissions, although like they do claim to be holistic. So yeah, it totally depends on the school. It's mainly used as a filter, and the other aspects of your application also matter a lot.
Yeah, so my unweighted GPA was like a 3.9 something, weighted I think was a 4.2. I took the SAT, had a 1530 super scored. I think Irvine and like Orange County culture around SAT and GPA scores is kind of toxic. So don't discount yourself if you don't necessarily have the best GPA or SAT scores, because I have seen people with like a 1200 on the SAT and like a 3.2 GPA get into Cornell. So like don't discount yourself. And I think it's even if you have like really low grades your freshman sophomore year, as long as you can show improvement, colleges really like that. So they will take into account that even if you have a lower GPA, you have improved over your 4 years. So maybe you're getting like C's and B's your freshman year, and then by your senior year, you're getting like a mixture of A's and B's and like AP classes. That's definitely the college is gonna look favorably at that. And while it might not be equivalent to a 4.0, it's gonna be very similar to.
Sounds good. I think we can go off this question and talk about general tips and advices on maintaining your GPA high enough, and also like any tips on standardized testings like SAT or ACT. Although I don't know if David still remembers when he took SAT or ACT. It was like 4 years ago.
I do not.
I think the maintaining a high GPA one is, for me at least, it was really about not, I know this is gonna sound weird, but just like not being lazy, I guess. Like there's a lot of the times where it was so easy for me, I don't know, like there'd be like Spanish extra credit or something like that, and I would just be like, oh my god, like this is so dumb, like I don't really need this, like I don't want to do this. And then like like finals comes around or something like that, and you just really wish you did it. So I think for me it was just like not being lazy. And I know that sounds like really weird or like bad, but a lot of the times I think it's easy, especially in high school when you have so many, like a stream of like work coming in, and a lot of it seems like busy work, to kind of discount like several like assignments and be like, I don't really want to do this, I don't really need to do this seems so not useful. But like a good mindset can really help. Like if your teacher's assigning this, try to have faith that there's probably a reason why they're assigning it, even if you've seen no reason they're assigning it, and just like try your best on it to do it. And then don't be lazy when it comes to these things. And then scoring well on exams, more in particular, I think it's like SAT, ACT exam, things like that. I think I do really subscribe to the belief that like it's not really about how smart you are, things like that. It's kind of about how well you know how to take these exams. So for that, I would just say take a lot of practice exams. You know, some people say to go to prep classes. I don't really think that's necessary. If you can financially and like if you time wise, and if you think it's useful for you, like go for it. But also I think it's just about taking a lot of practice exams and like, yeah, the practice, that's it.
Actually, you know what? I will drop a piece of engineering knowledge here. So there's this concept called the point of diminishing returns. So if you, like, for example, if you maybe you put in 5 hours a week to a class study and get like study for like a B, it might take like double that amount to go for like an A minus, and then double that amount again to go for an A. And so maybe this is more of a college like a college idea, but there are definitely, no, it's high school too. There are definitely going to be times when your workload is more than you can bear, and like it's okay if things like slip through the gaps sometimes. Like if you like, yes, if you're going for the top tier like GPAs and stuff, it will require a lot of you, because that's just how like really that's just how statistics works. But yeah, I think it's helpful to come to classes with an understanding that like, yeah, like going from a C to a B might be like X amount of effort, but going from a B to an A is going to be like a lot more.
Okay, so for me personally, I was like a really bad studier in high school. I didn't have any strategy to study for my tests. Honestly, I think there was like some measure of luck involved. I was like one of those cram studiers where it's like on the day of the test, you're like frantically going through all your notes and like trying to stuff your head with knowledge. It ended up working to some extent. I also, although I may not study a lot outside of school, I made sure to pay attention like during class. And that definitely helped a lot for me because I'm usually able to remember a lot of information if I hear it like through audio. So it's definitely like a learning style. It depends on how you learn best. So just go off of that. In terms of scoring well on exams, I tend to have like a lot of anxiety when I take tests. I actually took the SAT before I took the ACT. I took a lot of SAT practice tests and I wasn't happy with my score and I was putting too much stress on myself to do well. And then I actually ended up just taking the ACT like unprepped. I actually looked up the format of some of the sections before I went for my test. For me, I perform best when I'm just like not under pressure. And so like I was like, oh, you know what? Like I have an SAT score. So like worst case, I like do really badly on this. And I think that attitude just like helped me do better. I don't really know how to describe it. You should definitely, but there are definitely some strategies from like my SAT practice test that like translated over the ACT. So it'd be false to say like, oh, I didn't prepare at all. Like definitely a lot of the strategies used on the SAT can be used on the ACT as well. And that like translated over. I was just under less pressure, so it definitely helped me in that environment.
Yeah, for GPA, it's like just as Catherine said, do the work, even if you don't want to. Also learn to prioritize. I found that like humanities classes tended to come a lot easier to me, so I didn't study for those as much. But like my STEM classes, I actually needed to apply myself for and like actually like kind of take more careful notes and like actually review the material like a couple weeks ahead of the exam instead of cramming it the night before. And then exams, you just need to know how to take the exam. It's not how smart you are or anything. So look up those tips because you really do just need to know how to recognize the kind of question and approach that question specifically because you need to think the way the test creators want you to think, not necessarily like what you might think is logically correct. So look up the tips. I went to SAT camp. That helped me. But obviously a lot of people do really well on the exam without doing that. So do whatever you think will work for you.
And maybe one more holistic note. I would actually say that if you want to do better on like in your classes and things, use your phone less, use social media less, because I think the way that social media and a lot of online, really anything works is by like attention diversion. It like holds your attention for like 2 seconds and then directs you to something else. That is not what you want when you're studying for a class. You want to be able to focus on something for a long period, like a decently long period of time. And if you're always on your phone, you build that habit of like low attention span, just like jumping from thing to thing. And that's why sometimes it's so hard to focus on classes. So don't use Instagram as much. Don't use it. I don't have it on my phone actually.
Well, again, thank you so much for all your responses. At this point, we will have an open forum in which the attendees can freely ask their own questions to our panelists. You can also ask them in the chat. And since we did skip a few questions, if there is no questions from the audience, then we will go back to some of the questions that we skipped and get them answered. Feel free to type it in the chat or verbally speak out by unmuting yourself. Oh, so one person asked, was a question about extracurricular answered? And yeah, we did have a section about extracurriculars. And since this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel, InterSTEM Media, so you can check that out after our event. And we also have a question. What do you feel was the most valuable aspect of your application? And I think that's a great question. That's actually one of the questions that we ended up skipping. So it'd be nice if you guys could answer that question.
Most valuable, I think I kind of touched on this before, but for me it's just like like if you like during the application process, I try not to think about it like that, as I mentioned it before, because I think, you know, you don't really know what they're looking for. Different schools are looking for different things. They're going to place different weights, so just do the best on what you can at the moment, because there's only a certain amount of things you can control in certain parts of your high school life. Like obviously in sophomore year you can't really focus on your essays yet, or you shouldn't be at least. And then but then now looking back, if I had to, you know, pick a most valuable aspect, I don't know. I think it's just the fact that I like the extracurriculars I did, I think were really things I liked, and my passion was seen through them. And like, I really displayed my passion for these things, whether it's through my accomplishments or my essays. So I think it would be that the fact that I conveyed my passion for the extracurriculars I did well. But yeah.
Oh, I guess adding on to that, I also feel like in particular, speaking about my application, I think if there's like a tier of extracurriculars, I think my extracurriculars were very strong, but they weren't like God tier. I definitely think my essays helped make the difference, especially in like some of my applications that weren't necessarily UC applications. And I put a lot of thought into my essays and really making sure that they showed through aspects of my personality that couldn't be seen elsewhere. I went like very unconventionally with some of the prompts, and I didn't put too much pressure on myself to be super formal. Like I definitely feel like in your essays, just being natural and just being honest and like sincere definitely like shows through, and it can make a difference.
Yeah, for me, very similar to Sasha. My extracurriculars were like decent. I was very involved in them, but I like did not win any national awards or whatever. But my essays helped show that passion that I had for things like debate. And I think that probably showed through to admission officers in the schools that I got accepted to. So I think like for me, essays probably helped show who I was the best. I also found like writing essays was a little therapeutic. I don't know if everyone agrees with me on this, but I enjoyed it. So.
All right. I think we will have our last question for today, and that is, it's asked by Simone, and that's was there any high school extracurricular in particular that you think made you stand out as an applicant, whether that's winning a certain award, attending a prestigious program, etc.
I think if these awards come, then they come. And I think this is actually a mindset I adopted kind of later in high school, because what happened was I was into both physics and math, and there's like math Olympiads, and I always did kind of, you know, I did pretty well with them. So I was like, I want to repeat my success with physics. And I tried really hard and it just never happened. And I think for a while it actually turned off my interest for physics a little bit, which is devastating for me because I've always really liked it. And I think that's when I kind of realized that if these awards come, they're going to come because, you know, from your passion and the time you spent, and they will follow naturally. But if you put a lot of pressure on yourself that there's an award you feel like you have to get, it actually kind of backfires, and more so it kind of decreases your natural enjoyment for them, at least from my experience. So I would just say, like, if it comes, it comes, that's great. If it doesn't, there's other ways to show your passion. Clubs, essays, don't worry about it. As long as you like it, as long as you truly like it, the passion is going to come through. And that's really all awards do, show your passion for something. And then attending a prestigious program, I'm thinking probably like summer programs is what the question is pertaining to. I would say that once again, like if this program is something you want to attend because you like it, see, like the programs I went to, I think I would say that they're like, like people have heard of them, but I don't think I would have enjoyed them nearly as much if they were programs I went to just because I felt like I had to. More so it's the fact that these are really good math research programs, and because of that I was genuinely very interested. And I think that's also why I got in, because they can see your passion. So once again, same advice. If it happens, it happens, but let it happen because you really want to go and not for the name.
And maybe to approach that from another angle, So one really common thing that's like that you'll see all the time from job interviews to like grad applications is this little phrase like the ability to be a self-starter, or like the ability to like work unsupervised. I think extracurriculars that, I guess, yeah, to reiterate something that was said earlier, extracurriculars that help you do that, like they like put you in an environment. They're like, okay, you need to do this, or you need to like meet this deadline, but we're not really going to tell you how to get there. You got to figure that part out yourself. That is a massively important skill to have, because it will help you study. It will help you do your college apps. It will help you apply for jobs. It will help you when you get to your job, and I don't know, it'll help you like make friends too. Is just like being able to like work in your outside your own comfort zone is something that's really, really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that's being said so far. In terms of like awards, like any type of like accolade, what type of programs to attend. Bottom line is that you should just enjoy what you do. Your mental health is your first priority, and everything comes later. And regardless, even if you don't get the outcome you want from like a particular situation, maybe your application for something gets rejected, who knows, right? Everything is a learning experience. And in the end, like, I don't know, just like, you should take like that failure as a way to like grow from it. And I definitely think, like, as David was talking about, it will help you in the future. And like, it'll really give you those skills that will help you, like, whether it's like a job interview or like an internship, anything like that.
Yeah, so I didn't have any of those like prestigious awards or like even summer programs or anything. I had a lot of leadership experience, and it was just because like the things that I did, I enjoyed a lot. So like I wanted to be in leadership positions. My essays, I just kind of talk about what I learned from being a leader in those organizations, why I enjoyed those kinds of things. And I think even though I didn't have necessarily like I didn't get to like the highest places in debate competitions and stuff like that, but I think my passion for it showed through. And I guess like Hopkins didn't really care that I never made it to like the TOC, because they thought I was just passionate about it.
Well, it seems like we are out of time. So I think we can wrap it up here. So thank you all for coming to our first ever AMA. And obviously, thank you so much to our 4 wonderful panelists. If you want to stay updated on our future events, please follow us on Instagram at inner.stem. And you can also visit our website at interstem.us. And thanks for coming, and you guys are free to leave. And thank you so much.